Amazing what a few weeks can do for the weather. Just a couple weeks ago we were struggling to keep warm, and today it's such a nice day. The birds are chirping like it's spring, and the laundry is being hung out on the line because it's going to be warm enough today that it will dry reasonably quickly. It's going to be kind of a cleanup day today. I'm going to go around and pick up all the limbs that have fallen and haven't been picked up for the last month or so. And I hope to get down to the barn and work on my bus today. The cats are very excited that it's nice out, so they can come outside and actually explore a little bit instead of just running from the RV to the shed and back. Today is February 2nd, and in pagan tradition, it marks the halfway point between our winter solstice and our spring equinox. Most people call the spring equinox the first day of spring, but to me, I really feel like this day is kind of the first day of spring. And I noticed a few days ago the birds were out chirping, which they haven't done since last fall. So I think the birds agree with me that spring is here. It's still chilly, but it's much better, and I think it's supposed to be almost up to 60 today. When I was a kid, I hated this chore of having to pick up sticks, but as an adult, it's kind of a fun time for me because sometimes I can find the jelly ear mushrooms that I can harvest and use for food. Sometimes there'll be other mushrooms like turkey tails, things like that. So it's a great time to do a little foraging while I'm working. Some more jelly ears, and these look a lot fresher than the other ones. So what I do when I find some that I could harvest, I put them to the back of the wagon so that when I throw these out, I just grab those and I'll pluck off the mushrooms, and then I can use them for cooking. This one was under the leaves, and so I don't know if it's just starting or if it's way far gone, but it's just turning to goo because it's been there for so long. These actually feel pretty fresh, but as you can see here, they're pretty slimy. So I might actually set these aside and just see if the fungi continue to grow and then harvest them later. So besides me having my cats, my son also has a few cats, and this is one of his. And these two do not get along. So Thea is letting my cat know that this is her territory and he needs to stay back. She's a take no crap kind of cat. The branches that I typically find the wood ears on are oak trees. And I just found another one that's a really good one, very fresh. I also find the jelly ears on the maple tree branches as well. And I found one here that the jelly ears, looks like they're just starting to come back, although some of them might have been on there earlier and froze. But you can see the little nubs here. So this is another one that I might kind of just set aside at the side of the wood pile and kind of bury it underneath so it's in shade, and see if I can get them to grow a little better. I don't have much of a collection of the wood ear, but my cart is pretty full with limbs, so I'm just going to pick up as I head to the burn pile and then go around the back and do a second load. I always try to double check the branches too as I put them back on the pile, because sometimes I do miss some that have the wood ears on them, or the jelly ears. I like to double check just to make sure I didn't miss any. So this brush pile will get burned off soon on a day that's not very windy. My older son sometimes will have friends over and they'll have a bonfire. Make a night of it. So here's my piles I've created. Those are the ones I want to let sit a little longer to see if they will bud out any more jelly ears, and then these are the ones that I'll harvest today. So time to harvest the limbs from the backyard. This is something I love to see. While all the invasive ladybugs like to bunker up in my RV for the winter, the native ladybugs prefer to dwell at the base of trees. And so this is a sycamore tree, and there's a home for the native ladybugs, which is awesome to see. And it's warm enough that they're coming out to explore and enjoy the warm weather. As a bonus, my garden is right over there. So pretty close distance for them. So come spring and summer, when I have all my plants in the garden, I know I can count on the ladybugs to come and eat all the bad bugs off my plants. They are very happy to be colonizing this area, and I'm very happy to see them all. So overall, not a very large jelly ear harvest. Sycamore leaves make a great makeshift plate or a holder for you. Oops. So hopefully I'll get a bigger harvest in another couple weeks next time I go collecting limbs. Just cover those up a little bit just to protect them from the hot sun. And here is my small collection of the jelly ears. Another sign that spring is coming. We did have chickweed here, and you can see it kind of got burnt off by the freeze, but it's starting to make a comeback, and it won't be long until this entire patch of chickweed is thick and lush and thriving and ready to be harvested. Chickweed is a great medicinal herb. It's edible, so you can use it similar to like spinach in salads and things like that. I've seen recipes for doing grilled cheese with chickweed sandwiches, and they've put the chickweed on after the cheese was melted, and then they cooked a little longer, and then they cut it and turn it into a sandwich. Chickweed is really good for our skin, and if it's infused in an oil, it can be made into a salve for all sorts of wounds and cuts and bruises, things like that. And a strong infusion of it, which is a tea that's been steeped for a really long time, can be used as a drink to help with weight loss. There's many uses for chickweed. I'll revisit it later in the spring once there's enough here that I can actually harvest. Right now, it's just now starting to come out of the ground. When I was a kid, this lake used to have fencing all around it, and in our pasture we usually had a couple of horses, and we also raised some beef cattle that we would butcher, and we'd sell part of it and keep part of it for ourselves, and the sales would usually cover the cost of purchasing the beef in the first place. But I have fond memories of this lake. And we had a horse, his name was Rusty, but we used to call him Moose because he loved to get in the water in the summertime. So we would lead him out into the middle of the lake. It wasn't very deep. It was probably, it was up past his, about like, it wasn't all the way up to his back, about halfway up his sides, I guess. He was a pretty good sized horse. But we would take him out, and he would just stand out in the middle of the lake and kind of eat at the moss and play in the water, and we would climb up on the back of him and jump off of him. When it was really hot, he would go to the edges of the lake where the water had sort of dehydrated or evaporated off, and he would roll in the mud and cover himself up and just be covered solid with mud. So now I have the the jelly ears in here, and I'm going to break them out on this baking tray, and I'm going to let them dry out since I don't have enough to use. So basically I'm just going to take them and tear them into smaller pieces, kind of bite-sized pieces, and just spread them out on the tray. And I try to clean as much debris off them as possible. So the other ones that are out there, I'll keep an eye on them and see if they grow any bigger. If not, I can harvest them as they were, where they're black and dried out. It's basically they're already dehydrated. They do that in the wintertime. And then when it starts, the spring rains come and it warms up again, then they start growing again. So the growing season on these is just getting started. I think typically throughout the winter, they tend to grow. They tend to keep growing because of our climate. It stays relatively warm until January, and then that's when we usually have a really deep freeze. So now that that's passed and we're going to be getting into warmer temperatures, I should be able to find more and start collecting more. To use these then, I could use them fresh and just throw them into my food, or like I said, I can dry them and then rehydrate them later. But they typically don't have a flavor to them. You don't really want to eat them raw. You want to cook them first. But they take on the flavor of whatever they're cooking in. So they're great to add into like soups and stews, things like that, stir fries. And you can just add them in. They do have some nutritional and medicinal value to them. So anytime you can find an edible medicinal mushroom and add that to your food is always a good thing. So now that I have these all on the tray, I'm going to go ahead and put them, just set them in the oven so they have a space where they can dry and they're not going to get a lot of dust on them and the cats won't get into them. And probably within a day or so, they'll be completely dry. And then I'll just put them in a glass jar and keep them until I'm ready to use them. I decided to come back out to the wood pile and check, or the brush pile, and check the limbs to see if I could find any other jelly ears, because I knew that I had thrown some on here previously that had some started. So I have, so far I've collected a small handful, but I can also see where a bunch of them on this branch are starting to come out with our recent rain and our warmer weather. Basically, they are starting to come back into season. So if I lift up this bark, see this nice patch of them is starting to develop. So I'm going to put that back down over there just to protect it a little bit. But I'll keep checking back at these, and I should be able to get plenty more in the next week or two, depending on what the weather situation is. But I can see here's some, so I'm going to collect those. And this is a pretty good little amount as well. And just, oops, don't want to spill them out or drop them. They can go down in there and I won't be able to get them, but hopefully that'll just send off for new generations. And my hand is getting full. So we have a couple months before we'll burn this off, so I have plenty of time to come back and harvest them as they develop. Another mushroom that is starting to develop over here too. I believe these, I can get to them, are turkey tails. see them starting to develop on here. Actually, nope, these are not turkey tails. These actually look kind of like oysters, now that I'm looking at them closer. So I'll keep an eye on these because this might actually be a flush of baby oyster mushrooms. Be another choice edible. So I'll keep an eye on these as they progress. This is my favorite way to grow mushrooms. I've never been very successful in purposely cultivating mushrooms, but I have had mushrooms just come on in the wild. And so I just try to nurture those along and harvest them whenever I can. Here are some more down here. Trying to get to them. See if I can squeeze through here. Yeah, these look more promising. See if I can pull that out. See how these are poured? The other ones were gilled. Trying to get the camera to focus on them. So these would be a Trametes or turkey tail. Very pretty and very medicinal. These can be dried and powdered, and you can add them to teas or soups for the medicinal qualities of them. I'm not sure which species this is. I would have to ID it out. There's some great online, I think it's Mushroom Experts is one source that could help me key out which one this is. But very valuable to have on hand and easily grown on their own in the wild. And kitty approved. Okay, I've got the additional jelly ears on the drying tray, and I also added some of the turkey tails. A lot of them were still really small, so I want to give them some more opportunity to grow bigger, and then I'll harvest more, but I did harvest a few so that I could key them out and dry them up. I'm just placing them in my cold oven. I'm not trying to warm them. I'm just trying to, like I said, keep the dust off of them and keep the cats out of them. And I'll just put them in here and let them dry out, and I'll check on them in a day or so.